Hello, and welcome to episode 9 of Public Interest Podcast with your host, Jordan Cooper, where we interview politicians, activists, and advocates, and anyone else who advances the public interest. We're here today with Bill Jacobs of the Green Democrats in Montgomery County, Maryland. Good morning, Bill.
Good morning.
So I'd like to just start off the conversation by asking you, what have you done or what are you currently doing to advance the public interest and why?
Okay. Well, I spread out in numerous fields. I'm still with the Green Democrats. My mother has become the president since,
Right.
and that's still going on. We'll be doing a recycling tutorial there, as well as hearing from a representative from the Green Party. We're kind of a liaison between the Democratic Party and the Green Party, hoping to build bridges there. I'm a member of my homeowners association.
Oh.
So we try to keep the neighborhood in good shape, but I'm also always mindful of the capacity of such boards to intervene a little too much in resident lives. I'm sort of the libertarian member of that board, and they're rather receptive, thankfully. I started a small business called First Stop Tech back in 2009 during the recession, mindful that unemployment was high and technicians were looking for work. So I made this company that was supposed to help the workers and pass on most of the money to the technicians themselves. Markup at, say, Geek Squad, they're getting paid $10, $12 an hour and charging $60. We charge $42 and we top out at $35. So the profit margin is minuscule by comparison. There's also Meta, which is a company that hasn't gotten far off the ground. It's a company-making company designed to set up startup companies for people who are chronically underemployed and unemployed. Brand new graduates, folks who have been out of the workforce too long, folks with medical issues, the elderly, people who have a tough time landing work. So the idea was to make companies that they could work for. And that way get a reference, because people like to hire people who are already working. Right. This is how you get working with a startup company.
So how successful have you been with that last company?
This actually is a brand new venture.
Oh.
So we're getting together a core of 5 folks. We got a high school graduate, got a homeless guy, got a handicapped fellow who's willing to do marketing and accounting, and a fellow who's underemployed because he moved to the area and lost a lot of his clientele, who's in charge of graphics and marketing. So getting those four together, and we're looking for another couple folks to flesh the group out. What they'll end up doing is going to be a committee of those 6 members who decide what business they think they could do well.
So I know that you have a daughter, but I'm wondering maybe she is a motivation. You know, you've seen her friends have difficulty or what's the motivation really for having gotten involved with this startup? How did you get the idea?
Similar to this small company watching the unacceptably high unemployment, there were numerous stories about the chronic unemployment because there was this taint. If you were out of work longer than 6 months, suddenly people thought there was something wrong with you.
Right.
And I wondered, how could he fix that? Well, by hiring themselves. And folks are always stuck on the concept of getting a job.
Right.
And I wanted to get it into people's heads, especially our young people, you young people listening out there. Don't get a job, make a job. There's nothing like it when you can't be fired. So if you have a startup company, even as a second job, which I do, I have a full-time job at NIH. First Stop Tech as a side business. I farm out as much work as I can. But if you're having a tough time getting a job, make your job. Make a company. A company is a middleman between workers and the customers who want to buy that work. And the company is just taking a slice. So make your company. Be that middleman.
Interesting. So the topic of entrepreneurship is quite apropos. I mean, we're talking on a new podcast. I think the point that you were trying to convey is what people need are not jobs, but what they need is revenue. And then they have to get creative in finding ways to get revenue. And it doesn't need to be a traditional job. They can just see a problem in the world and go out and fix it, as you're trying to do.
You nail it when you say find a problem and solve it. That's what startup businesses are all about. One one guru in entrepreneurship said that a lot of people want to find a new problem, but often the problem is not finding a good service at an affordable price that exists. I look around, I see landscaping trucks everywhere. There's hundreds of landscaping companies. So if one more landscaper enters the business, sure, there's lots of competition, but obviously the competition can be supported. You're coming in at a good price because you're new. People will try you. We had more on that.
We're talking about why you have invested a lot of yourself into advancing the public interest and how you do it the variety of ways.
With the unemployment issue and getting people of the mindset of entrepreneurship, and I remembered what I wanted to say. What we have a dearth of in this country, when you want to get a job, that's someone you're looking to someone to provide that. You said revenue, and yeah, that's pretty much it. No one looks for a job for anything else. You're looking for a salary is what you're looking for. You're not really looking for a job. And when you're looking for a job, you're looking for a way to get that salary that you think will be higher because you'll be good at that job. That's what seeking the job is. What you're looking for is that revenue. And if you do a startup company, you're kind of bypassing the job part and looking for that revenue, which is looking for customers. And what that takes is initiative, and initiative is a form of leadership. And it's something that people think other people do for them. And folks have to look a little inward and ask themselves, am I a leader? And it's not a leader in comparison to a president or a state delegate or even a CEO, a parent. You need to look around yourself at the peers and ask yourself, if you're in a crowded elevator and you know the people around, you ask, who of these people should be bosses? And you're not picking one. You're picking what group, because we don't have enough bosses. We don't have enough leaders. And folks have to look hard in the mirror and ask themselves, should I be leading something? Should I be in charge? And this comes to activism as well. Should you be leading something, organizing, telling people about good ideas, gathering them to your idea, which could be a company, and then producing the revenue because you saw the need to produce good jobs, and you've decided to make those jobs with others. And that's what a startup becomes. But it takes that kernel of recognition in yourself that you can be a leader, and we don't have enough of them. So I think the standard people are placing for themselves is too high. And people should be ready to try and fail. We may have heard that before, try and fail. Well, you got to try first, and not enough people are trying, which may mean that you, listener, are the person who should be trying, and you didn't realize it till just now.
So I'd like to segue a little bit to a few topics you brought up, advocacy and revenue. Obviously, you're involved in a lot of non-remunerated activities. If you were only seeking to maximize revenue, you probably wouldn't be involved with the Green Democrats. You may be seeking a job where you would have a higher salary, yet you've helped political campaigns out. You've done a lot of work in the community. There's some kind of mission or calling, some kind of,
curse.
Curse, that drives you to be an advocate. And I was wondering, what is that? Because it's a job or a vocation or an occupation or the thing that you do with your time. For a lot of people who advance the public interest, it's about a lot more than just making revenue.
Oh, yes, which has been a failing of mine and a curse, as I say. Looking to help others and do good on the planet. Went on park cleanups and marches and all sorts of things which don't pay anything. And lately, having two girls that are approaching college, the push towards money has pushed me in this sort of hybrid environment where I'm trying to make money but also do good in the world. And that's some socially minded companies do that. They're altruistic in holding events or charity drives or such. We're having a bowling charity drive by my contractor, CSRA, plug. And they're having this bowling party, and they ask for a donation to the Children's Inn at NIH. But you have these hybrid environments, business and companies, and that is a little how my life has evolved. But the drive to do this good rather than seek maximum profit Yeah, it holds you back from becoming rich. That's a certain thing. If you want money, that's the direction you're going to go. But also that way madness can lie, because we end up with situations where you place your company in a role where it becomes this creature that controls others, such as a policy that gets your hired staff to, say, cross-sell accounts, a banking account, a credit card account, and then if you place the quotas too high, they start making up accounts and committing fraud. Well, that's when you're going for maximum money, the incentive to look away from things your company shouldn't be doing becomes very high, and that's when we start thinking of corporate evil. That's when you're losing sight, or never had, the initiative to help society, help folks who need it.
So why do you have a drive to help folks who need help?
Where does it come from? Wow, I've had that philosophical discussion. Where do ideas come from? Where do feelings come from? And I've had to deal with psychological issues, folks who are clinically depressed. And two people can have the exact same lives and have a decent home, 3 squares a day, good job, and yet one will be on top of the world and the other will just be ready to kill themselves. Same situation, why do they feel differently about it? The same two different people can have the identical situation yet feel differently. So where do feelings of altruism come from? Possibly upbringing, but I'd be speculating and skeptical. Some of that, I think, may be built in. Now, what one does about the lack of initiative to help society, or even if one should do that, there are those capitalists who think that the greatest good is by producing the most money, and they have utter faith that if you hold true to that North Star, all of society will fall into place and everyone will be happy. I don't know that we'll ever get to the point where we can find out whether they're right. I'm skeptical, but I also don't know that we've truly tried that approach in order to find out. I'm not sure how you'd start.
So we were talking about, well, I'm just trying to think. Are you talking about leadership, service to the community, and wondering where it comes from? Now, something, it occurs to me, you have 2 daughters. When many listeners might be parents, or at least all listeners have had parents, parenting is a very selfless act. It's about putting others before yourself. They often are biologically related to you, but even adopted children are put, their interests are often in Western society put ahead of self-interest. Yet public service, through advocacy, through entrepreneurship, to provide people opportunities to make revenue and have fulfillment, is about putting other people who aren't related to you necessarily, although there have been many successful family businesses, but it's about putting other people, their interests ahead of your own. And that's, I guess, potentially one possible definition of public interest and of public service. So I guess my question to you is, how would you reconcile your commitment to your daughters and trying to make some money to send them to school and provide for them adequately? How would you compare that to your commitment to advancing the public interest through your many endeavors?
Well, that becomes a balancing act. How much are you going to commit to what you feel you've got to do to survive versus how you're going to help your daughters survive or thrive, and how much you want them to thrive is also going to be producing balances where you may fall away from public service. I feel like I have fallen away from public service far more than I want to. And this hybrid of the business and promoting entrepreneurship amongst the chronically underemployed, this is something of a compromise. The balance we're looking for folks can feel strapped already. I have a decent job, so I'm not as crushed as many people. If they have two jobs, then the idea of public service becomes almost impossible. Sometimes they help through their church as a group. Leadership comes into it. Are you going to join and let a lot of other people do the heavy lifting, and you'll just do what you can, which is sort of the role that I'm in now. I'd rather not be, but I am. I do very little of the planning and heavy lifting. I offer ideas. I'm part of committees, but I don't chair any of them anymore. I'll get back into that, I suppose, when the girls are in college and not around as much and needing my help, homework, tutoring, and things like that.
So there's some connection between leadership and service. The more that you're able to take a leadership role, the greater the service is. It seems to be what you're saying.
Could be, as long as you're doing it for the right reasons. Leadership can be a grasping, selfish, ambitious thing. Which can be very disillusioning if you don't win those leadership roles, I suppose. But you may have a point there. The folks who can commit the most and provide the most good are going to be admired and raised for promotion. I suppose a lot like at a corporation, at a job. If you do the most and you do it well, you're going to be lifted, elevated to leadership, or perhaps strike out on your own and produce a nonprofit or a charity of your own and gather some of your old companions and bring in new.
So those are a lot of extrinsic rewards. They're coming from external sources like public appreciation, financial rewards, recognition, acclaim. But talk to me a little bit about the intrinsic rewards of public service, if you will.
Yeah, well, some folks will find religious satisfaction out of it, the idea of pleasing any number of deities, one of which would be Yahweh. Jehovah in some people's names, in some people's reckoning. And there's also those warm fuzzies that are so difficult to explain. These are feelings. Where do they come from? Do they come from parents, from our genes that produce the biochemistry of our brains, that produce reward centers that somehow get ticked off when, I suppose that's a sense of empathy. When you see you've brought joy to somebody and the empathy allows you to feel that joy, you produce a simulation in your brain what it must feel like to have received your own gift. Perhaps that's where some of the reward is coming from. You're imagining yourself in the role of the people you're helping and sharing their joy that way.
Now, are you ever motivated to do public service through reason without receiving warm fuzzies? I'm sure there are many times when you've been frustrated or when something hasn't gone according to plan and things just haven't been all warm and fuzzy and I'm feeling so good because I'm altruistic. No one shows up to the meeting, whatever it is. So is there a rational reason, for instance, maybe to whom much is given, much is expected? Or you have some kind of responsibility to society since you're in a position to help and other people need your help, perhaps that's motivation enough to do public service.
But to fulfill that, to those that much is given, much is expected, that philosophy, to fill that, I could see two reactions to it, which is a feeling of gratification that you fulfilled that, you have met a goal for yourself. That's a reward center. We know our levels of need. Once all our security, food, shelter are met, we start looking for productive work, and sometimes that includes helping others. You've achieved that goal. That's some satisfaction. And to set those goals themselves, setting the goal and planning it is a matter of reason. What good am I going to do in the world? Before you've begun doing the good in the world, I suppose that's going to be reason, and that's going to be at least a thought process, if not some part of work. So planning to be good comes first, I imagine. Before the warm fuzzies, you plan to land those warm fuzzies, or you may feel under the obligation, either because parents drilled it into you. You don't really feel it, but you do it out of duty. I suppose that could be part of the reason. How will I get out from underneath this obligation? So some folks would say that a relief of pain is the same as pleasure. And if you're relieving that feeling of duty, of obligation, it's sort of a production of pleasure. It's just lifting you from misery to neutral instead of from neutral to feeling joyous. That could be a matter of reason. I wish to relieve myself of these ill feelings. You could have some of that.
So we're reaching the end of this podcast. I'd like to center us back on Bill Jacobs. So if you would, just answer our final question. So Bill, what really, so we've been talking about advancing to public interest. I guess, do you have any final thoughts about whether others who may be considering getting more involved in public service, whether they should and why, or if you have any other thoughts you'd like to add before we conclude this podcast?
Well, we just said that the folks that have the most time can produce the most good. And some of the folks out there kid themselves as to how little time they have, but they will have this tendency to perhaps binge watch an entire season of TV, which means 8 hours, and 2 of those hours could be spent towards public service, or even keeping it closer to home, helping a friend move, or moving some of those tapes over to a digital format that will survive the death of the VCR for your grandmother. Any number of things you should get to. Sometimes we're taking them up with TV or less meaningful pursuits, and folks may find that the rich rewards of those helping others, if you can, especially if you can harness that empathy for others and feel the joy that you bring to others. If you're capable of that, you'll want to switch off the TV a little more and feed that inner part of you, because that's something that lasts more than the last plot line of the next season of Battlestar Galactica. Whatever is binge watched today. So, did I date myself there?
Yeah,
I think I did. Circa 2012.
So that has been Bill Jacobs, advising listeners to get up off the couch and carpe diem, make the world a better place. Let them know that you are here. So this has been episode 9 of Public Interest Podcast with your host, Jordan Cooper, where we interview activists, politicians, and advocates, and others who advance the public interest. Thank you so much for joining us, and we'll talk to you next time.